We were in the kitchen. That much I remember.
He was slicing cucumbers, the way he always does, carefully. He's afraid of cutting more than the vegetable. I was leaning against the counter, stirring a pot. I wasn't really watching.
The air smelled like garlic and something sharp, like vinegar.
It was a small moment. The kind of moment married people pass through like hallway ghosts, familiar, functional, silent.
And then it happened. I said his name. Except it wasn't his. Liam, can you hand me the salt?
The knife stopped.
I didn't realize it right away.
Not until I looked up and saw him frozen, hand hovering over the counter like someone trying to remember what they were just doing.
What did you say?
He asked, without looking at me. And that's when I felt it, the drop in my stomach, like a sinkhole opening underneath an ordinary day. I tried to fix it, but there's no patch for a moment like that.
Liam was my ex. Not a recent ex.
Not someone I'd seen or spoken to in years. Just a name buried in the back of my head, in the same drawer as old email passwords and my first address.
It was a slip, I said. Too quickly. He nodded. But the cucumbers didn't get sliced after that. And we didn't eat dinner. That night in bed, he turned the lamp off before I could read. A small thing. But not nothing.
We lay in the dark, a breath apart. I could feel the edge of the blanket tight against my side, like he'd tucked himself in and left me out.
I wanted to say something. Anything, but all I could think about was how stupid it sounded, how no amount of logic could unstick a name from the air once it had been released.
Oh, it didn't mean anything, I whispered.
I know. But he didn't reach for me. I didn't tell anyone. Not my sister. Not my best friend.
Not even my therapist, though I had a session 2 days later. Because it felt like one of those things that would get worse once said aloud.
More real. More permanent.
Like naming a ghost that hadn't meant to haunt.
The next morning, he left for work early.
Said he had meetings. He kissed me goodbye, barely brushing my cheek.
And that was the worst part. Not the mistake. Not even the silence. But the way his lips didn't linger. It should have ended there. But 2 weeks later, I did it again. It wasn't even a moment of tension. That's the part that haunts me most. We were folding laundry.
It was a Saturday morning, and I had just finished picking lint off the edge of a towel when it happened again.
Liam, can you pass me? His hand stopped midair, holding one of my socks. Blue, with tiny dots. I froze. This time, I heard it immediately. The wrongness. Like a clink in a song you've played too many times to not notice. I wanted to rewind the second. Undo it. Swallow the syllables back down. He set the sock on the bed, neatly, like it was fragile.
Seriously, he said, soft but sharp.
A scalpel kind of voice.
I don't know why that happened, I whispered, shame climbing into my throat.
He didn't look at me. Do you still think about him? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know how. Not in the way he meant. Not like that.
That night, I sat on the bathroom floor with the door closed. The tiles cold against my back. My face buried in a towel that still smelled like his detergent.
And I cried. Not for Liam. For myself.
For the version of me that was trying so hard not to break what we still had. For the way guilt warps the body, makes you feel like you're the one who just cheated, even though all you did was remember.
He didn't bring it up again. Not explicitly. But he stopped doing the little things. Stopped squeezing my hand when we watched TV. Stopped bringing me a second cup of coffee when I forgot I had asked for it.
Stopped singing softly in the kitchen on weekend mornings. It was like watching someone retreat without leaving.
And I didn't know how to follow.
A week later, his mother came over for dinner. She brought her usual carrot cake, too sweet, too dry, but always expected.
I tried to act normal. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and just chose to pretend, the way people do when something is wrong but not catastrophic. Halfway through dessert, she turned to me and smiled. You remind me a little of Liam.
My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. She laughed, as if it were a harmless comment.
He was the one before, right? The musician? I always liked him. Shame it didn't work out. My husband stiffened next to me. I smiled, tight. Yes, that's him. Well, she said, looking at her son, you upgraded, didn't you? He didn't respond. The silence spread across the table like a stain. After she left, we did the dishes in silence. I scrubbed harder than necessary. The water too hot. My fingers red. He dried the plates with slow, even movements. You didn't say anything, I said quietly. About what she said. He shrugged. She doesn't know. But you do. He looked at me, finally. And in his eyes, there was something heavy. I don't want to compete with a memory. You're not. He didn't say I believe you. He didn't say anything. I started waking up earlier than him. I'd sit on the edge of the bed and watch the light creep in, thin and pale. I'd touch his back, lightly, like checking he was still real. Some mornings, he turned toward me. Some mornings, he didn't. I told my sister, finally. We were sitting in her car, outside a grocery store. She was rummaging for gum in her bag. I called him by Liam's name. Twice. She blinked, looked up. Oh. Not on purpose. Of course not. But still. She chewed slowly. Do you think you still have feelings? Not for Liam. Not like that. Then what is it? I shrugged. Maybe I just never made peace with who I was when I was with him. That's not nothing. I know. When I got home that night, he was already asleep. A book on his chest. His glasses askew. One hand curled into a fist. Even in dreams, he was bracing. I climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling. And I thought about how names are just labels for stories. And how sometimes, the story isn't done telling itself, even if the person is gone. And still, I hadn't told him everything. Not about the dreams. Not about the therapy. Not about the memory that wouldn't go away. Not yet. But maybe soon. Maybe before it became too late to fix whatever was still left to hold. He started coming home later. Not suspiciously. Not in the way you might fear. Just enough to be noticeable. A pattern forming in the spaces between. Sorry, the client meeting ran over, he'd say. Traffic was brutal. I stayed back to finish up reports. Each excuse perfectly reasonable. Each one another thread in the distance growing quietly between us. At night, I'd wait to hear the door. Sometimes I wouldn't even realize I'd been holding my breath until it finally creaked open. Then I'd listen to the thud of his bag on the floor, the faint rustle of his jacket being hung, the soft tap of his footsteps as he crossed the hallway. Sometimes he'd come into the bedroom and sit on the edge of the bed like he was somewhere else entirely. Sometimes he didn't come in at all until I'd fallen asleep. One evening, I tried to reach out. I made his favorite penne with roasted garlic and sun-dried tomatoes. I even bought that wine he always used to pick up on Fridays when we were dating. He smiled when he saw the table. This looks amazing, he said. But during the meal, he kept glancing at his phone. Not in a rude way. Just, like he was expecting something more important. He never took a bite of the tomatoes. Do you want to talk? I asked that night, as we were getting into bed. He paused, half lifting the sheets. About what? About us. He looked tired. Not angry. Not even hurt. Just spent. It's been a long week, he said. Can we not tonight? And I said yes. Because when someone doesn't want to talk, you can't force the words out without breaking something. The next morning, I went for a walk alone. Just down the block and back, coffee in hand, scarf tied around my neck. I passed the bakery where we used to go on Sundays. The one with the crooked door and the cinnamon rolls he always said were overrated but nostalgic. I didn't go in. Some memories are better from the outside. My mother called. You sound tired, she said. I am. Everything okay at home? Yes. Just a lot going on. She paused. Is he still patient with you? That word. He's not impatient. That's not the same. Later, I found an old photo while cleaning the closet. The two of us, laughing. He had his arms around me, and my eyes were scrunched up in that way they only are when I really laugh. Not polite laughter. Not social laughter. Real, gut-deep joy. I couldn't remember the last time we looked like that. So I put the photo in a drawer. Because I didn't want to ask myself why I'd taken it out in the first place. That week in therapy, I told her. I think I broke something that was already cracked. She nodded. Do you think he's punishing you? No. That would be easier. He's not cruel. So what is he doing? I stared at my hands. He's retreating. Gently. But I feel it. And you? I'm hovering, trying not to make it worse. We stopped kissing goodbye. Not abruptly. Not dramatically. One morning, we were both just too distracted. And then the next morning it didn't feel like the moment was there. And then suddenly, it had been a week since our last kiss. One night I found him asleep on the couch. TV on low. Remote in hand. He looked peaceful. Sad, somehow, even in sleep. I watched him for a while, hand to the wall like I needed balance. I didn't wake him. I just turned the TV off and covered him with a blanket. Because sometimes kindness is all you have when you don't know what else is welcome. We had dinner with his sister the next day. At her place. She asked about our vacation plans. I smiled. He said we hadn't decided. You two used to plan everything 6 months in advance, she said, teasing. He smiled, but not at me. We've been busy. I wondered if she could tell. If she noticed how our hands never touched. How we laughed at different jokes. How we both spoke like we were filling space, not sharing it. Later, in the car, I said, "You don't talk to me anymore." He kept his eyes on the road. I don't know what to say. Then say that. Don't just go quiet. He gripped the wheel tighter. It's not just about a name. I know. It's about what it meant. I turned to the window. And what did it mean? He didn't answer. And I didn't ask again. Sometimes I wonder if all marriages carry this kind of fracture eventually. A tiny hairline crack that no one sees until suddenly the whole thing is splintering in your hands. Not because you stopped loving each other. But because the weight of what you didn't say finally collapsed what was holding you up. And still, we hadn't had the real conversation. The one I was terrified of. The one where he asks me what I still carry. And I have to decide whether to tell the truth. Or to lie kindly, the way people do when they're trying to protect something already fragile. But the words were coming. I could feel them. And I wasn't sure which would be worse, saying them. Or letting them stay silent. He found it by accident. The box. I had tucked it into the back of my dresser drawer, behind a stack of scarves I never wear and a few old birthday cards. It wasn't hidden, exactly. But it wasn't on display. He was looking for batteries, I think. Or maybe one of the spare charger blocks I always hoard. When I came home from the grocery store, it was sitting on the bed. Untouched, but unmistakable. He was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, arms crossed, jaw tight. I put the milk away before I said anything. You found the box. He didn't nod. Didn't move. I didn't know you still had things from him, he said finally. Not accusing. Just tired. I wasn't keeping it for him, I said. Then what for? I opened my mouth. Closed it again. Because I didn't know. Later that night, he asked to see inside. So we sat on the floor and opened it together. Inside were a few concert tickets. A photo booth strip from a carnival I barely remembered. A tiny keychain shaped like a lemon that had some joke behind it I couldn't explain anymore. I held it up and laughed. I don't even know why I kept this. He didn't laugh. You never told me you kept this stuff. I forgot it was there. He raised an eyebrow. I think, maybe I kept it because I didn't want to forget who I used to be. Not because of him. But because of how I used to feel. Before I got tired. Before I was walking on eggshells. I didn't know what parts of myself were welcome anymore. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he picked up one of the photos. Me, blurry, laughing, sunlight in my eyes. You looked happy. I was. But not just because of him. Sometimes I think I gave him too much credit. He set the photo down. Do you miss that version of you? Every day. We didn't argue that night. But we didn't sleep either. He stayed up reading. I stayed up pretending to read. And between us, the air was heavy with things not said. 2 days later, he came home with a bag of groceries and a small bunch of yellow tulips. I know you like them, he said, placing them in a jar. And I realized it was the first time in weeks that he had done something without me having to ask. Can we talk? I asked that night. He nodded.
So we sat on the sofa, legs tucked under us, like we used to on slow Sunday mornings.
I don't know why I said his name. Twice. Yes. Twice. I wish I could go back. But you can't. I know.
I think it's not the name, he said.
It's that I didn't even know he was still somewhere in your head. It's not like that. But it's something. Yes. It's a wound, not a love. Not anymore. He nodded, slowly. I don't want to compete with your past. You don't have to. Then what do I do with the parts of you I'll never fully know? I didn't have an answer. A few days later, I gave him a notebook. What's this? A place to ask me anything you want to know. Things I haven't said. About me. About now.
He flipped through the blank pages.
What if I don't want to read the answers? Then don't.
But at least you'll have them.
He wrote in it that night. And left it on my side of the bed. One question, scribbled in his quick, careful handwriting. What did you feel when you said his name? I sat with the question for an hour. Then I wrote, shock, shame, grief, like my tongue betrayed me.
I had picked up a photograph from a drawer without realizing it and accidentally showed it to the one person I never wanted to hurt.
The next night, another question. Do you think of him more than you think of me? I didn't write anything. Instead, I left a post-it note. You are here. Every morning. Every night. Every in-between.
That has never changed.
He didn't ask again. We began to talk more. Not about the box. Or the name.
Or the weight of what had been broken.
But about smaller things. He asked how my day was and actually listened to the answer.
I touched his shoulder in the kitchen and he didn't flinch.
It wasn't healing. But it was something. I took the box and put it in the attic. Not to forget.
But to release it from our daily space. Because sometimes the past needs its own shelf, far from where you sleep.
He didn't ask where I put it. And I think that was his way of saying thank you. The following weekend, we visited his parents again. His mother asked if we were going to try for a baby soon. We laughed it off. Politely, he squeezed my knee under the table. I caught his sister watching us.
And I think for the first time in a long time, she saw something she recognized.
We drove home in silence.
But this one was softer.
We stopped for ice cream, shared a cone. And I thought, maybe you don't fix everything. Maybe you just start holding each other with both hands again.
In early spring, we painted the bedroom. A soft gray.
Not quite blue, not quite white.
A color that felt like starting over, but gently. We moved the bed away from the wall, pulled down the curtains, laid plastic sheeting on the floor like we were covering up old grief. We painted in comfortable silence, our brushes moving side by side. At one point, he touched my back with the edge of his fingers and said, "You missed a spot."
I turned, paintbrush in hand, mock glaring. He grinned. And for a moment, we were younger. Lighter. It passed quickly, but it was real.
A few days later, he found the notebook again.
Do you still want to use it? He asked. I nodded. If you do. He opened to a blank page and wrote, "What's something you wish I understood?" I didn't answer right away. I waited a full day. Then I wrote, "That guilt is sticky. That I carry it even when I smile.
That I still replay both times I said the wrong name, and it never hurts less."
The next night, the notebook returned. Do you trust me to love you past that? I cried a little when I read it. Then I wrote, yes. But I still don't know how to forgive myself. He didn't write back after that.
But the next morning, he made me toast and kissed the top of my head without saying anything.
Sometimes that's all the answer you need. My sister called. She asked if we were okay. We're working on it, I said. Still the name thing? It's not just the name. It never was. She sighed. I know you. You bury things too deep. And he leaves things unsaid. Sounds like you're both still trying, though. That counts. Sometimes I wonder if it's enough. Enough for what? To stay. To be happy. To be us again. There was a pause. Maybe you don't have to be again. Maybe you just have to be new. Together. We went to a dinner party with friends we hadn't seen in months. There was wine, too much cheese, loud laughter.
At one point, someone asked how long we'd been married.
He looked at me before answering. 6 years.
And still figuring it out.
Everyone laughed.
I looked down at my plate. But under the table, he took my hand.
And I squeezed it. That night, in the car, I said, "I like the way you said that. Still figuring it out." Because it's true. Do you ever worry we'll run out of things to figure? He shook his head.
I think the day we stop being curious about each other is the day we should worry.
We started cooking together again. Not every night. But enough that we remembered the rhythm.
The way he likes the garlic pressed, not minced. The way I chop vegetables too fast, too loud.
We laughed again. Not often, not forced, just enough. I took the box from the attic and gave it to him. "I want you to decide what to do with it."
He looked surprised.
"Why?" "Because I'm ready to let it go. But I want you to know I mean it." He didn't open it. He just nodded. "Let's get rid of it." So we did. We didn't burn it. Or throw it dramatically in the trash. We recycled the paper. Gave the keychain to Goodwill. It was quiet. Ordinary. And that felt right.
One night, while folding laundry, he said,
"I used to worry you'd never fully be mine." I didn't look up. "Do you still?" "No. Now I think love is choosing someone even when parts of them lived somewhere else first." I smiled.
"I think you just wrote a better vow than the one we used."
"Maybe.
But I'd still marry you with the old one."
We didn't talk about the name anymore.
But sometimes I saw it flicker across his face when we'd pass a familiar song, or someone mentioned old friends. And when I saw it, I'd reach for his hand.
Not to fix it. Just to be there.
And sometimes, he did the same for me.
Because guilt doesn't leave when you ask nicely.
But it does quiet down when someone stays beside you while it settles. It was a Thursday in late spring when I saw him pause mid-sentence at dinner. We were eating spaghetti, the kind with too much garlic, the kind we always said we'd regret but never really did. He had just made a joke about the neighbor's new dog, something about its bark sounding like a squeaky toy in distress, when his voice caught.
Not dramatically, not with panic. Just caught. Like the words didn't quite know where to go.
I looked up, fork halfway to my mouth. He blinked, then smiled.
"Sorry. Thought I heard something outside." But I knew that look. It was the look he wore the first time he told me his father had left. The look he wore when I said the wrong name. A pause that meant more than what followed. After dinner, we went for a walk.
It had started to drizzle, and the pavement was that kind of wet that reflects everything: streetlights, passing cars, your own thoughts.
We didn't talk at first. We walked in step. And then he said, "Do you think we're different now?" I thought about lying. Or softening. But instead I said, "Yes." "Worse?" "Not worse, just aware." He nodded. "That's the word. Aware."
Later, in bed, he touched my hair.
"You used to hum in your sleep. Did you know that?" "No." "I still do?" "Not anymore." "When did it stop?"
"Around the time we stopped speaking easily."
I turned to him. "You remember things I forget. Only the quiet ones." That weekend, we visited my father.
He sat in his chair, stubborn as ever, flipping through a newspaper like the world hadn't changed since 1997.
"You kids staying out of trouble?" he asked. "Trying," I said. My father gave my husband a long look. Then nodded. "Takes a lot to stick it out these days. Everyone's quick to cut and run." My husband didn't say anything, just smiled politely. But in the car on the way home, he said, "You never told me they fought so much." They didn't. Not in front of us. But you knew. I knew. Do you think that's why you stay quiet? I think that's why I think love means surviving discomfort. He didn't argue. And that made it hurt more. He started leaving notes again. Just small ones. Went for a run. Back in 30. Save me some coffee. You looked beautiful this morning. Just wanted you to know. Don't forget to eat lunch. And breathe.
Each one folded neatly on the kitchen counter, like a breadcrumb back to affection.
I kept them all in a drawer under the cutlery.
One evening, I found him sitting on the porch, barefoot, watching the sun dip.
Do you still have bad dreams? I asked. Sometimes. Not like before. What were they about? He didn't answer right away. Mostly that I was talking to you and you couldn't hear me.
Or that you were next to me but walking away, and I couldn't follow.
You could have woken me. I didn't want to make it real.
I sat beside him.
I hear you now. He nodded. I know. We had dinner with friends.
A couple who had just gotten engaged.
They asked for advice. He said, don't keep score. And don't assume silence is peace. Say the hard things when they're small. They nodded, wide-eyed, hopeful, sweet.
Later, walking home, he took my hand.
We used to be them, he said. We still are. Just weathered. Do you miss those days? Sometimes. But I like us better now. Why? Because we know what it means to stay. And to mean it. At night, he held me closer. Not because he needed reassurance, but because holding someone is sometimes the only way to say, I'm not going anywhere.
I told my therapist,
I think we're learning each other again. From scratch. She smiled. And is that scary? Terrifying. But worth it? Every single second. The last page of the notebook came a week later. He wrote, what do you see when you look at me now? And I answered, someone I'm not done loving. Someone I never was. The next morning, the notebook was gone. Replaced by a coffee mug. Full. Still warm. No note. Just presence. And maybe that was the only answer left to give.
Summer arrived with a quiet kind of boldness, heat rising off sidewalks, a hum of fans in windows, the heavy scent of honeysuckle drifting in through open screens. We slept with the windows open, and sometimes he'd roll toward me in the night and brush my arm with his fingertips. Not quite reaching. Not quite pulling away. It felt like a kind of language, one I hadn't spoken fluently in a long time. One morning, I found him sitting on the edge of the bed, lacing his shoes slowly. I had a dream last night, he said. I sat up. Yeah? You were laughing. Really laughing. And I couldn't tell if I was the one making you laugh, or if it was someone else. He didn't look at me when he said it. Did you ask in the dream? He nodded. You didn't answer. You just kept laughing. I touched his back. It was you. It's always been you. He nodded again. And I hope, he believed it. That night, we hosted friends for dinner. He made his slow-cooked brisket, the one that takes all day but is worth it. I made salad and dessert. We moved in sync, the way we used to. Quiet orchestration. After everyone left, we stood in the kitchen, the soft chaos of dishes all around us. You were funny tonight, I said. You were glowing. I think that was the wine. He smiled. No. It was you. We started going to the farmer's market on Saturdays. We walked the stalls, tried cheeses on toothpicks, shared iced coffees. He liked the tomatoes. I liked the peaches. One morning, he bought me sunflowers without saying anything, just handed them over with a shrug. I cried later. Alone, in the kitchen. Not because of the gesture. Because I realized I hadn't expected it. And that scared me. At therapy, I said. I keep waiting for it to fall apart again. What makes you think it might? Because I'm not sure I deserve how kind he's being. What if kindness isn't about deserving? Then I don't know what to do with it. He came home with paint swatches one afternoon. I thought we might try something brighter in the living room. I looked at the colors. Coral, warm gray, dusty green. You're picking colors now? He grinned, trying to leave fewer decisions up to you. You mean trying to show up more? He paused. That. We fought once, about dishes. A stupid, sharp-edged fight that wasn't about the dishes at all. I'm not your housemate, I snapped. I'm not your ghost, he said back. We stood in opposite corners of the kitchen, breathing hard. And then, slowly, we crossed the space between. He touched my face.
Sorry. Me too. We didn't need to explain what we really meant.
One afternoon, I sat by the window and started writing him a letter.
Not in the notebook. Just a loose sheet of paper. Sometimes I look at you and feel like I'm seeing you for the first time again. Not the man I married. The man you've become.
And I think I want to love this version, too.
I didn't give it to him.
I tucked it into a book he'd been reading.
A week later, I found it dog-eared. And beside it, a sticky note. I want to be someone who earns that. Every day.
We took a short trip.
Nothing fancy. A small cabin by the lake. No signal. No plans. We sat by the water in silence, skipped stones, took naps, made simple meals. One night, we lay in bed, the fan humming above us.
I don't think I'm who I thought I'd be, I said.
He traced circles on my shoulder. Who did you think you'd be? More together. Less fragile. I like your fragile parts. Even the ones that hurt you? Especially those. Because they're honest.
I told him something I hadn't said out loud before. I still think of the first time I messed up. I can't let go of how your face looked.
You don't have to let go. Just don't live there.
I closed my eyes.
And for once, I didn't feel like I was. Back home, we planted herbs on the windowsill. Basil, mint, thyme.
Every morning, he waters them. Every morning, I kiss his shoulder before leaving for work.
They're small things.
But they're ours. Sometimes I still wake with a knot in my chest.
But it loosens faster now.
Because I know when I roll over, he's there.
Breathing soft, present, real.
And that matters more than all the things we lost. Because we're still choosing. And the choosing, quiet, deliberate, daily, is what love looks like now. By mid-August, the sun began setting earlier again. We noticed it one evening as we sat on the back steps with ice cream, his chocolate, mine vanilla with sprinkles I pretended not to like but always finished.
The sky turned that soft pink gray that only lasts for a few minutes. He pointed it out. Feels like summer's starting to slip. I nodded. Maybe it's time. For what? For the next version of us. He looked at me. Not confused. Just listening. And I realized how much that still mattered. We talked more at night. Not about the past. Not anymore. About ideas. Regrets. Old dreams we never voiced. I told him I used to imagine opening a tiny bookstore.
He said he always wanted to learn how to fix motorcycles.
We still could, he said, half smiling. Maybe when we retire. Maybe sooner.
There was something bold in the way he said it.
Not reckless. Hopeful.
One evening, I forgot to pick up the dry cleaning.
He forgot to text me when his meeting ran late. We both came home annoyed.
The kind of low-grade frustration that doesn't start loud, but simmers.
Dinner was quiet. I dropped a fork. He sighed too hard. Then, finally, why does everything feel so loaded lately?
Because we're scared.
Still. Of what? That we'll fall again. And not catch it in time.
He stared at his plate.
I don't want to live like that. Then let's stop flinching. He looked up. How?
By trusting the other won't disappear.
Even when we screw up. We made a pact. No more tiptoeing. If we were upset, we'd say it.
If we were tired, we'd say it. If we were scared, especially, we'd say it.
And when we forgot, because of course we would, we'd forgive that too. The next day, he surprised me with lunch.
A picnic in the park, sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, lemonade in a thermos.
We sat under a tree and let the wind mess up our hair. We never did this when things were good, I said.
Maybe we didn't know how to appreciate the quiet. I leaned against him.
I think we're learning. We visited my sister's new apartment that weekend.
She pulled me aside while he helped hang shelves. You seem steadier, she said.
I feel steadier. Did he change?
A little.
Or did you?
Both.
We softened. She raised an eyebrow. That sounds romantic. It's not. It's work. But it's good.
That night, he rubbed my back until I fell asleep. I woke at 3 a.m. and he was still there, one hand resting gently on my waist.
I didn't cry. But something inside me unclenched.
We framed a new photo.
Not posed. Not from a special occasion. Just the two of us, laughing, mid-bite, faces messy with chocolate cake. It sits on the mantel now. Not as a reminder of who we were, but who we're becoming. I still think about the name sometimes.
How it fell out of my mouth and changed us.
Not because it was him,
but because it revealed all the words we hadn't said. All the cracks we'd plastered over. And I wonder if maybe that rupture, awful as it was, forced us to finally see each other clearly.
Not through the lens of we're fine,
but through the mess of trying.
And choosing. And staying. We watched the sunset again. This time, we didn't say anything.
His hand found mine.
Not tentative, certain. And that, I realized, is what healing feels like. Not loud, not cinematic, just real.
Like sitting quietly next to the person who saw you at your worst and didn't leave. By September, the air had changed again. Not cold, not yet, but with that crispness that hints at something new around the corner.
Change, waiting politely on the threshold. We'd fallen into a rhythm. Not perfect, not effortless, but intentional.
Like dancers relearning a familiar step, but slower this time. More aware of where the other's feet had been. One morning, I came down to find the dishwasher running and breakfast already made.
Toast, eggs, tea, just the way I like it. I blinked, surprised. You didn't have to, I said. He shrugged. I wanted to. You looked tired yesterday. I didn't say anything. I just sat down. Ate quietly. Let the kindness land.
Because part of learning to stay is learning to receive without guilt.
At work, someone mentioned a name I hadn't heard in years. Liam. It was nothing. A new hire, unrelated, wrong spelling. But I flinched. Not visibly, I don't think.
But inside, that tiny ripple.
I came home late that night.
He was on the couch, reading.
Long day? He asked.
Weird day, I said.
He didn't press.
But when I sat beside him, he put the book down.
Wrapped an arm around my shoulders. And just stayed there. And I realized, he didn't need to ask. He already knew. We started talking about a trip. Something small. A weekend drive.
Somewhere we hadn't been, or maybe somewhere we had, but needed to see with new eyes.
No itinerary, he said. Just time together. We booked a cabin by the coast. 2 nights. No distractions, just the promise of presence.
The first night there, we walked along the shoreline.
The wind tugged at my sleeves. He handed me his jacket without saying anything. We stood in silence, watching the tide come in. Do you ever think we'll forget this year? I asked. I hope not. Even the hard parts? Especially the hard parts. That's where we grew. I took his hand. Then let's keep growing. Back home, things weren't easier. But they were clearer.
He had a stressful week at work. I snapped at him over something dumb. I think it was socks on the floor.
We argued. Voice raised. Not yelling, but sharp.
Then we paused. I'm sorry, I said first.
Me too, he said quickly.
And we both meant it.
The next day, I came home to folded laundry and a note. Still learning. Still loving you. We had dinner with friends again. Someone asked how we keep the spark. We laughed. Awkwardly. Later, in the car, I said. We don't have a spark. Not like that. No. But we have a pulse. A slow one. But steady. And we smiled. Because that felt right.
One night, I dreamed about the past again.
Not Liam, exactly.
Just a version of myself, younger, more restless, less afraid. I woke in the dark, heart thudding.
He stirred. Nightmare? Just something old. He pulled me close. You're here now. That's what matters. I closed my eyes and let myself believe it. We painted the kitchen. I picked the color.
He spilled paint on his shirt.
We laughed. Not performative. Not strained. Real. My mother came to visit.
She noticed the sunflowers on the table, the new color on the walls.
Feels lighter in here, she said. We've been opening more windows, I replied. She gave me a look. Good. Keep letting the air in. Some days, I still feel it, the weight of the past. The mistake. The memory of his face when I said the wrong name. But more often now, I feel something else. His hand in mine. His laugh echoing down the hallway. The sound of our life, rebuilding itself. Not from scratch. But from care. From effort. From love that doesn't need to be loud to be real. It's autumn now. The mornings are colder. Our windows fog up from the inside. I've started wearing socks to bed again, and he teases me for it, calls them grandma feet, then pulls me close anyway. There are new routines now. He makes breakfast more often. I leave the porch light on if I'm home first. We started doing crosswords together in the evening, even though neither of us is especially good. The notebook is gone. But not forgotten. The conversations we had in its pages shaped how we speak now, directly, but gently. Honestly, but with care. One Sunday morning, I found him standing by the window, watching the street. You okay? I asked. Just thinking. About? He turned to me. About how close we came to not making it. I nodded. Do you regret staying? No, he said. I regret not seeing you sooner. I stepped closer. I regret not letting myself be seen. We stood there, the autumn light casting long shadows across the floor. And I knew we had changed. Not into something new. But something true. We went to dinner with his sister. She asked, casually, if we were still thinking about kids. I looked at him. He looked at me. We're still thinking, I said. Later, in the car, he asked. Do you still want that? Some days, yes. Some days I want peace more. He nodded. Whatever we choose, I want it to feel like ours, not pressure. I reached across the console. Then let's keep choosing. Together. We started walking in the evenings again. Same route, same houses. But we noticed different things. The dog with 3 legs. The wind chime on the corner porch. The kid who always waves from the window. One night, he said. You've stopped apologizing for that day. You've stopped holding it like proof. We didn't need to say which day. We both knew. And we both smiled. We had a small fight the next week. Something about plans, who forgot to RSVP to something, who assumed the other would. It was sharp. Quick. But this time, we didn't go silent. We sat down, spoke softly, named our hurt without blame. And afterward, he made tea. I folded laundry. Normal, safe, real. One night, lying in bed, he whispered. Do you still think of him? The question didn't sting. Sometimes. But not like you think. More like a memory of who I was. A life I outgrew. Do you ever miss that version of you? Sometimes. But I like this version more. He kissed my shoulder. Me too. We didn't celebrate an anniversary this year with a big dinner or trip. Instead, we stayed home. Cooked together. Danced in the kitchen. He gave me a card with only 5 words inside. I still choose you. Always. I wrote back on a napkin. Even after the name. Especially after. I still catch glimpses of the old cracks sometimes. In the way I flinch when I forget something. In the way he pauses before asking certain questions. But now, those cracks are seams. Places we've stitched ourselves together. Not to pretend nothing happened. But to honor that we lived through it. And came out kinder. At the end of October, we sat on the porch watching leaves fall. He had his arm around me. My head on his chest. We're not perfect, I said. God, no. But we're real. He kissed the top of my head. And getting better at it. Sometimes, when people ask about us, I still hesitate. Not because I'm unsure. But because there's no easy way to explain what it means to truly stay through hurt, shame, and the long rebuilding. How it doesn't always look like romance. Sometimes it looks like coffee cups and shared silence. Sometimes it looks like remembering to ask how they slept. Sometimes it looks like folding someone's sweatshirt and placing it on their side of the bed. I don't need us to be what we were. I just need us to be this. Two people who failed each other, and then didn't. Two people who got it wrong, and stayed to get it right. Two people who still reach, even now. Especially now. Because we know. This is what love looks like after the fall. Not a perfect picture. But a living thing. Still breathing, still here.